Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome you all to the BizKnight product series. I guess you all know this product series consists of 10 episodes, and we are currently at the ninth episode of this BizKnight product series. So if you see, these are the 8 episodes we have covered so far. And in case any of you have missed any of the episodes, you can watch out. It's on the same link through which you have registered for the event. And we are currently on the ninth episode, which is about startup math, navigating unit economics by Suresh Ramalingam. So before we move to the session, I'll just give a brief about how we have created this experience of BizKnight product series. So you will be receiving a link through which you have to register for this event. And once you have registered, you will receive a confirmation email, and post that you will receive invite for each event. So every month we have a BizKnight event. So for every event you will receive an email, and post every event you will also get an email through which you can attend the quiz. And if you see, every event have we have designed a new avatarians, and once you have attended the quiz, you will be able to unlock those avatarians in the BizKnight booklet. So at the end of the product series, right, based on the participation and based on the avatarians you have unlocked, you will be able to receive rewards. Yeah, so today we are at the ninth episode of BizKnight product series, which is about startup math, navigating unit economics. So here, Suresh Ramalingam will be discussing on the secret to a startup success and failure. Also, in his own words, he said it often boils down to a few key numbers, right? I mean, either if it is success or failure, and it's not only about having the right product at the right time. Imagine being able to peer into the financial future of your product, making decisions today that propel it to tomorrow's success. Yes, let's welcome to the world of unit economics. Here we have with us Suresh Ramalingam. Just a brief intro about him. He has 15 plus years of experience in both leadership as well as consulting under multi-channel retail sector, where he thrives on evaluating complex problem statement to design products and services that offer compelling value propositions, which is resonating deeply with customers and business stakeholders. I guess we will have enriching session today with Suresh. Yeah, Suresh, you can take it forward.
Hi, Vishnu. Thank you. Thanks for that quick introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm sure you would find the session worthwhile of your time. I'll quickly share my screen, and once I get a confirmation that you're able to see my screen, then we'll get started. Right.
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. Let's go to play. Perfect. So the session is going to cover or enable the participants to have a quick feel of what we do behind the scenes in a startup world. So when we start or when we plan to launch a product in the ideation phase, what do we think about? What goes into the understanding of the customer? And once we got our customer, how do we then further trickle that information all the way to the unit level? A bit of math involved, but I've tried my best to keep it as simple as possible. We'll open last 10 minutes to questions, and more than happy to take questions even beyond the session. So the agenda for today. So how we're going to start with is to understand what unit economics is all about. Just a quick brief on unit economics, so we are all on the same page as we go through the next 1 hour. Second is to identify what's the ideal customer profile. So before we get into the unit economics itself, we need to understand whom we are building the product for. So because that information that we are going to capture is going to then eventually come into the calculations that we do for the math behind how we project our customers and the numbers. Third is we will navigate through the calculations itself. Fourth would be a quick conclusion, a summary of what we saw. And I also would like to open an additional topic, which is more of an extension to unit economics itself, on how do you position your product? How do you ensure that your product has a high willingness to pay among your customers? So I'll just quickly touch upon that topic, and definitely would be happy to discuss with you beyond the session on that. So what's unit economics, and what does it enable a startup or any organization, for the matter of fact, be it enterprise or startup? So in short, there are 3 C's that we work on as an organization, right? We try to have a large customer base who are having access to your products and services. That's our customer lens. Then we have our company itself, which is our internal workings. How do we build our products? How do we render or make these services and products available to our customers? What are the value chain? What's the value chain of a company? And the third one is the competition that we will have to stay ahead of. We need to keep our competitive advantage to stay on top of the game in the market. So when we look at these 3 lenses, one thing that touches upon or gets all of these 3 things together and helps you forecast where you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years term is understanding your customer base and connecting that to your vision of your company, right? And that's at a high level. So I have my customer, I have my product. How is that product going to fulfill customers' need? But how do we measure this? How do we measure this at unit level? Like, what is the value that I'm going to deliver as a product or service provider to my consumer? And as a matter of delivering this value or service to my consumer, how much of it is going to benefit me as an organization as well? Because we all run business for profit, right? So what is that profitability that's going to be captured by the business? So in strategy terms, we call it as value created versus value captured. And unit economics will help you as an organization or as a startup to understand your viability of business model at unit level. So we're going to look at some of the metrics that we would use for this as we move forward. So to start with, identifying our ideal customer profile, right? That's where all businesses start with. So I need to know what's my ideal customer profile. Yes, we would do a complete target opportunity market that we would eventually be able to achieve. But from that, we will further segment it into our serviceable market. And within that, we also look at what is our operable market, which is the immediate segment of customers that we would be able to capture. But even within the immediate segment of customers that we would be able to capture, there is an ideal customer profile, or per se, we call it as personas in product management. So when we build a persona for our product, we would like to know what are the different needs and problems that the customer profile has and how we're going to address it. The importance why we are stressing on an ICF in a unit economics discussion is because eventually when we look at how we are going to capture customers, how we are going to derive the customer lifetime value, everything eventually will boil down as a startup to your ideal customer profile. That's the set of customers you're going to address or you're going to target to acquire in the first year or 2 of your operations. So as part of that, there are 5 views that we would recommend. It starts with what are the underserved needs the customer has and that the product or service will address. What are the urgent needs? What are the unavoidable problems? Meaning, there are certain aspects of a customer's activity or jobs to be done by the customer that has certain unavoidable problems that they will have to go through. For example, in a heavy traffic congestion that happens in cities in the morning, it's an unavoidable problem if you have to reach your office. But how can my product or service help you navigate through that unavoidable problem by finding a better route? right? So, and then unworkable problems. Unworkable problems are those problems of customers that, if not addressed, it's going to be a make or break deal for them. Right? And then unfriendly solutions is something that we can also look at when we build our ideal customer profile to know, okay, the customer is already having a product or service available in the market, but what I am building as part of the new product or service is going to transform the way the customer gets their job done, unlike today where they are facing difficulties with the existing solutions in the market. So when we identify our ideal customer profile, we try to see what all our product fulfills to these specific problems and needs of that customer profile. So once we know our ideal customer profile, we try to understand what are the trade-offs the customer is willing to have. Meaning, I'm trying to build a product or service, but initially I want to keep the product lean. I do not want to go in and build a full-fledged North Star, right? We're going to work on an MVP. And when you work on an MVP, it is critical for us to understand what are the trade-offs that the customers value. A classic example, when MP3 players were introduced, there was a loss of quality in the music that we hear. Definitely MP3 quality is nowhere in comparison to what quality that we had in a record player or in a DVD. But the customers still opted for MP3 in spite of the drop in quality. With what did they value more? The trade-off was loss in quality of songs, but what they took was better convenience for them, so they can carry the MP3 player with them where they want, and better usability, ease of use, because they could just move the songs forward, backward, or rewind the song. So it helps them do it. So there is a trade-off here. So had we focused on building a product that was on high level of quality in songs, we would not have been able to identify the trade-offs. So it is critical to understand the trade-offs. So I know my customer profile, we know the trade-offs, and the most critical why we need to know our customer profile and trade-off is to have clear assumptions. And all of these ties up. Once I know my customer profile, once I know the trade-offs that the customer is willing to take, third is I will have to put in my assumptions against the desirability, meaning willingness for the customer to onboard your product or service. It is critical for us to have certain assumptions on desirability, because that eventually will boil down to your cost of customer acquisition as well. Because when there is high desirability for your product, your cost of customer acquisition would go down beyond the initial phase, because once you will definitely have to create that excitement, and for that you will have to invest in promotions. But once that is done, immediately the product will take off, because there is immense desirability among your target audience, right? So now you're able to relate, I believe. Like, we first started off with our customer profile. So for that profile, we got to know what are the trade-offs. And for that profile and trade-offs, now we are trying to put in assumptions, right? And all of these assumptions will eventually get pressure tested under our metrics that we are going to see as part of our unit economics, right? So once I know the desirability of the products, then we look at the accessibility. Accessibility by design is a critical feature that every product should look at, because there is a good percentage of customers who are physically challenged and would like to have products that are accessible friendly. And we could see this in our mobile devices. We could see this in certain apps where you have readability mechanisms, where you have ability for people with challenges with regards to eyesight, or with regards to aged population, where they have font sizes that could be adjusted in their app. So all of this comes under accessibility. Then comes your viability. Viability is it's one of the key assumptions that will be tested as part of our customer lifetime value computation, because Viability is what determines the assumptions that I'm going to put under viability is what is going to determine whether I can run my business successfully, whether I can scale my business successfully, and what product I'm building will I be able to keep up with the investment that's required to make the product viable, right? So I would have to capture those assumptions as well. And post that, it's feasibility. Feasibility is whether do you have the right technology today to build the product that we envision to build. It's not only the first MVP, but also the North Star that we are targeting for. Do we have the right tools and technology to do it? For example, Uber's North Star was to have a driverless car that would take people seamlessly across cities and city traffic. But they launched their North Star was that, but did they have the right set of technologies to do it today? It probably was highly projected in a way that we would be having driverless cars by 2024, but that was not the case. So when you build a product, you need to look at feasibility. And if you look at why we need to look at feasibility is because eventually when you look at customer acquisition, then you would need to know what is the feasibility for you to sustain as a business and build your product that meets your customer need. So for that, you will have to come up with assumptions against feasibility. Then you go to usability. Usability is basically what is the ease of use for your customer while using your application, or in this case, it's a SaaS platform, let's say. So how easy it is for your customers to navigate within your application. For your ideal customer profile, what is the demography? What's the age? What is the behavior of the customer? And how is that going to tie up to your usability? So I've just spent about 15 minutes on these three topics. That's because eventually you would have to be able to relate all of this to the unit economics as well. And there is, I'll just quickly touch upon a model where you can prioritize it. So you have your knowns and unknowns, meaning the assumptions that you have put, you already know that it does work. And to the other extent, you have assumptions that you are not yet sure, you need to investigate it. And then you have a low risk and a high risk on the y-axis. That is basically if the assumption is proved to be wrong, what is the risk to your business model? So that is what we capture as part of the y-axis. And based on this, we have to continuously discover on our assumptions and pressure test them. Right? So to summarize what we have seen so far, know your customer before your product is what we want to target. Right? And for that, you need to identify your ideal customer profile. Post that, you have to identify the trade-offs that the profile is willing to make for ease of use and better pricing. Third is create and test your assumptions. The first two will eventually boil down to your assumptions. So please make sure your assumptions are captured and critically validated, continuously validated throughout the product lifecycle. So now going into the numbers, right? So while going through the numbers, if you have any questions, please do stop me. So we would spend another 30 minutes exactly on the numbers. And to start with, we will look at what is customer acquisition cost. Some call it as CAC, or it is also called as COCA, which is cost of customer acquisition. So let's say we set up a SaaS-based product that will cater to the needs of elderly folks in the society. Let's say I'm going to offer delivery services and I'm going to offer nursing services at home for the elderly. So as part of this, they can come in, they can build an app. Sorry, I said SaaS. They can build an app. What I meant was app. So they can log into the app and then they can sign in, and then they can say that, okay, I'm going to do certain transactions, which would be like ordering products on the app or ordering medicines on the app, or they would call for a doctor or a nurse appointment on the app. And we would then eventually have those services with our connected partners delivered to their doorstep. So let's take this assumption, and then we will build on that. So as part of this, whenever you work on your customer acquisition cost, it is always better to segment it into short term, medium term, and long term. The reason for this is there is a changing market dynamic. There is a maturity of the product that we are building as well. And also there is a maturity among the customers who are using the product, right? There is a complete maturity at product level, as an organization, as competition comes into the market, and as a customer. Right? It all ties back to those three C's if you are able to relate that, right? So with that being said, your strategy for acquiring customers in the short term will be completely different from your strategy for acquiring customers in the medium versus the long term. Your short-term focus will be on demand generation. How am I going to create excitement for my product? How am I going to take my product to the customers? Am I going to create camps where I would be attracting elderlies in the community for whom we will be able to provide free medical camps, or we would be able to promote our products in those camps? How am I going to create the campaigns on social media? How am I going to ensure that there is word of mouth from our existing customers and to get in new customers? So that's our complete focus in short term. And the reason for calling this out is your customer acquisition cost in short term will always be high. And as you move forward, yes, the spending on sales and marketing will increase. Definitely it will increase because there is always going to be depreciating returns. But at the same time, I will be able to acquire more customers for the every dollar I'm going to spend on marketing. So as I move from short term, in the example here, we could see that. Question. Okay. So as we see here in the short term, the organization is spending on sales and marketing expense $5,000, let's say. In $5,000, only 20 new customers have been obtained during that period. Let's say short term is first 3 months of the product launch in this case. So in 3 months, as an organization, I've spent $5,000 on marketing and sales campaigns. And as outcome of it, I've acquired 20 new customers who have onboarded our application. That means my customer acquisition cost is $250 per customer. And though my spend is low, but at the same time, my CAC or customer acquisition cost is quite high. When we go to medium term, I'm going to spend 50,000, but if you look at the number of customers I'm going to acquire, it's 2,000. And what am I going to concentrate in the medium term? I'm going to concentrate on gaining traction. By gaining traction, we have made our product visible to the market. Now I need to attract customers to onboard my product and sustain those customers. There is one part to it, which is customer acquisition cost. There is also another part which we will see as part of lifetime value computation, where there is another component which we call as customer retention cost. So in the medium term, the focus is to gain traction. So by that, I want to reduce my customer acquisition cost. Now, let's say we are moving from medium term. So the product is launched. It's been a year now. So we have onboarded successfully quite a number of customers or elderly people in the community within the first operable market space that we are looking at. And from that target market, we have captured good sizable numbers. With this, our customer acquisition cost has gone down. And now it is at 25. The long term, which is now in our scenario, let's say we are stepping into the second year of operations, definitely I want to expand my target market, potentially think beyond my ideal customer profile as well, because it's not only going to be MVP, but it is going to be additional features beyond my MVP as a product. So that means the product has more number of features, and which in turn means that I would be able to attract more number of customers as well, or cater to a larger audience. With that being said, my sales and marketing spend has to increase to sustain the product. And as part of that, when my sales and marketing expenses increase, and given that I've already gained traction in the market, my number of customers will increase, or the new customers that as an organization we are able to acquire will increase. And with that, when we look at the proportion, though my cost is increasing, the number of new customers acquired is exponentially increasing. So, which means in turn that my cost of customer acquisition is going to go down drastically. So, in the stabilization phase, though the sales and marketing expense is going to increase, my CAC has to decrease. So, if you have a key takeaway that you want to take from customer acquisition cost, your cost of customer acquisition will go down, or we have to target at getting it lower by the time on the time horizon. No matter you increase your sales and marketing expense, your cost of customer acquisition should go down. That's the target that we have to look for. And a simple formula to calculate your customer acquisition is the sales and marketing promotional expenses divided by your number of customers acquired for the time period. Some people would also take the sales and marketing expense as a whole, but the only problem with that formula is that when we take our customer lifetime value, which we will see next, the problem is there I would also take into consideration the marketing expenses for retaining customers. So if we take the overall budgeting and try to put everything in CAC, then there is a certain amount of money that I'm spending on retaining my customers, and I'm also offloading that cost to acquiring customers. So just to keep a bifurcation, it depends on how your financials works, how the marketing structure works, but it is good if you can split this on sales and marketing promotion expenses versus your expenses for retaining your customers. So it gives you a better clarification. So with that being said, I'll pause if there is any questions quickly here, because it's critical for you to understand the CAC before we can move on to CLTV.
Yeah, Nidhi have raised her hand. Yeah, Nidhi, go ahead.
Yeah, should I type? I just saw your ping. If I have to type, I'm happy to do that also in the chat.
No, just go. If it's a short question, we can take it there.
Yeah. So actually, it's not related to the calculation part as such, but I think you mentioned, Suresh, that S&M cost would be increasing, and you connected it to depreciating returns. So, A, I didn't really understand the correlation. And secondly, I was also curious to know, will it always be depreciating returns, or are they depending on the business or the products?
Yeah. So there is another formula for depreciating returns, but it's not really under unit economics. But overall, what I meant by depreciating returns is every dollar you invest beyond that point in time, you're not going to get the same return. So a very classic example that's given in microeconomics is I buy a tractor to plow a farm. Before that, I was using a bullock. And as part of that, I was just getting 50,000 rupees yield from a farm. Now I've got a tractor. I'm going to reduce the time. I'm going to increase the efficiency. So I'm going to get probably 1 lakh in return. But as I increase and invest on the number of tractors, I'm not going to get the same multiples of it, right? I'm not going to go from 50 to 1 and from 1 to 150. Probably it's going to reduce. So there is a rate of diminishing returns on every investment that we do. Apply the same to your sales and marketing, because we have to be very cautious as startups. When we are investing highly on our marketing and promotions, it doesn't mean everything is going to transform into new customers. So we need to know that slope. How much I'm spending versus how much I'm getting, and that's exactly CAC will let you measure.
Okay. Thanks, Suresh.
Yeah, also, Suresh, we have one question on the chat.
Yes.
If you had to allocate budgets to the customer acquisition tactics, what would be the top three and how would you divide it?
So customer acquisition tactics, if I get the question right, then what are the different uh, um, steps or methods I would take to acquire customers? So first thing first, it depends on your product. But in our case, which is a product, which is a service involving a software, and a service which includes also a physical interaction with the customer, right? There is going to be someone who's going to go to the customer's place. So in such a scenario wherein there is a bit product versus a tangible or a personal service as well, then the marketing allocation for customer acquisition should focus on creating visibility for the product in the first place. That would be the first. I would not say tactic, but that's the first step where we would allocate maximum budget, right? Because as part of the short term, the requirement is to create demand. So that would be the maximum allocation of funding, which would get in the short term. But as I go to medium term, I'm going to switch equal or reduce, or if I have to have a proportional distribution, the distribution would also equally weight towards customer service, having better availability of nurse or service providers on the market to reach your customers shortly. So in this case, voice of customer is important because in the startup that we are discussing about, trust is a big factor, right? So if trust is coming in as a big factor, you have to invest considerable amount of money on your existing customers, and that will create trust, and that will in turn create voice of customer, a positive voice of customer. So first, in the short term, the budget allocation will be highly focused towards creating excitement. You will definitely have to create excitement around your product. As part of medium term, yes, the excitement will still have to go on because we'll have to create visibility for the product. But at the same time, I would also have to invest in acquiring new customers towards word of mouth by physically interacting with the customers by setting up camps. So the physical interaction would also gain good amount of investment in the medium term. And in the long term, it really depends on what's your outcome from the medium term and short term. So I would keep one initiative as a buffer, which I would be able to play the card as per the feedback that I get from short term and medium term and apply it in the long term. So I hope I was able to answer the question. If not, please do let us know on the chat.
Yeah, Suresh, I think Atul have raised his hand.
Yes.
Yeah, Suresh. So one question on a scenario where you're operating as a retail marketplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a retail marketplace, you will also have to spend on seller onboarding, because without that, we cannot serve the customers, right? Now, I understand that the classic sales and marketing promotions and the costs are associated on the customer side of things, but how would you account for costs that you have to incur for seller onboarding part? Where does that come into the picture for unit economics?
So you can look at it from a company's lens standpoint because it is still going to be via your platform. So we looked at three lenses in the beginning. One is our customer lens, second is our company lens, and third is competition. So when it comes to customer onboarding, we are looking at customer lifetime value, customer acquisition cost. But when we look at seller onboarding, then we are looking at it from a company's lens, and there is a lot more things that we have to take into account, right? We can look at dealer onboarding, for example, right? I'm onboarding a dealer who's going to sell their products. So I would have a cost of dealer onboarding as well. I can run a similar thing on how I'm going to retain my dealers. Similar customer acquisition can be applied on dealer acquisition. So there I would have bargaining power as well coming into picture to play a larger role. So the bargaining power of the supplier versus the bargaining power of me as a service provider would also come into play. So definitely we can discuss on it, but I guess that has other dynamics coming into play, not just the acquisition. Your question is right, but I think probably I'll have to deviate from the current topic to get into the details of that.
No problem, Suresh. Yeah, we can discuss offline. Thanks for that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay. So probably in the interest of time, we'll quickly move on to customer lifetime value computation. So one thing that I want you to take back from customer lifetime value, when you go to the internet, you will get hundreds of recommendations on how you can arrive at it. It's like a balance sheet, basically, right? So you have asset. In a balance sheet, you have typically an asset column. Asset on the left, and you have your liabilities and equities on your right. And both of these should balance. There are multiple ways to arrive at it, but you need to balance it. And it has to tell you your current, it's all about outstanding numbers, right? It's not a cash flow or anything, it's your outstanding numbers. Similarly, look at customer lifetime value as your single dipstick to know how effectively you're running your business from a customer's lens. There is a lot more that goes behind this. You will have to know your operating revenue. You need to know your internal days of stock, days of inventory, and all that stuff. Business as usual, they will all have to work. But when I look at it from a customer's lens, and specifically for a startup, it clearly tells me two things. How much am I spending to acquire customers? How much value am I capturing from the customers that I've acquired? And am I on a positive scale when I take both of these into account? That is, if you look at this formula, you have M minus C divided by 1 minus R plus I. That's one section of the formula. That is how much value I derive from the customer. That's what it tells me. We'll go into the details of it. And on the right side, if you look at, there is a CAC, customer acquisition cost. It tells you how much you're spending to acquire a customer. So when I know how much I'm deriving or value I'm deriving from a customer, minus how much I'm spending to acquire a customer, if it is on a positive scale, that means I'm doing something right. But if it is tipping off in the negative scale, and in the initial phase of the product, like we saw, the customer acquisition cost is exponentially high. It was like in the example we saw, it was $250 per customer. And I'm sure no one is going to spend $250 in a year for a subscription to an app right away. So that means my customer acquisition cost would be higher than my value acquired from a customer. So your CLV, customer lifetime value, is going to be negative. But that's okay to start with. But where does unit economics really plays a part here is we do projections for the next 3 to 5 years time horizon. And when we do projections, we need to know when we are turning profitable on transaction basis. So if your transaction is by customer, then it is your customer lifetime value turning positive. If your transaction is going to be at product or units that you sell, then it would be your product level information, which we just directly go for break even. We will also see that later. But in a customer's angle, we need to also know, let's say in the next 5 years, I'm going to run my project. How much is going to be my retention cost? How much is going to be our interest rate payables? So we will take all of that into account and then figure out what is my discount rate. And then we will eventually have to tie all of that back to the net present value. So we're going to see all of that in a working Excel. So I'll just quickly walk you through all of that. But before we go into the Excel, I just want to call out what is there in this formula. So one we saw is our customer value that we extract from a customer, which is the first part of it. And the second part of the formula is the customer acquisition cost part of it. And when you tie them both and negate them, or not tie them, negate them, you need to arrive at a positive value. That's what you have to target. a healthy customer lifetime value in general among the startup is it has to be 3 times your customer acquisition cost. So, which means if I spend $100, I should at least be able to make $300 in margin, in operating margin, not in revenue, but in operating margin. So if you look at the formula here, so you have M, which is your contributing margin per order. So like I said, it's not the revenue that we account for the margin per order, right? Minus my customer retention cost. So it can be margin per order, or if it's purely customer basis, I could just say margin, or what was my recurring margin per customer, right? So every month, how much I'm going to get from that customers as part of the subscription. Minus my customer retention cost. This was the cost we were talking about in the last slide, wherein we were saying like try to bifurcate your expenses for in marketing between retaining customers versus acquiring customers. It gives you a really better picture. Yes, there will be a slight overlap no matter what, because you would be spending on acquiring new customers, certain promotions, but that would also mean that, to retain your customers in for certain promotions, but eventually that will lead to getting new customers as well. And also you cannot really track word of mouth customers who have onboarded your app. But we will try to do our best to keep as much segregation as possible. Moving on to the third one is the retention rate. So retention rate is nothing but how much or what percentage of the customers that you have acquired were you able to retain over the period of time. And retention rate is something that you will have to be very conservative to start with. Do not put calculations where written, because we initially saw, right, it's all going to be assumptions to start with in a startup world. We do not know the exact figures. The best case, what we do is in a startup is take a cross domain or a cross industry or the parallel player in the same industry and study their business model and try to get these numbers. In fact, studying an existing player in the same domain may not be as beneficial, and you would be more benefited by studying another player who has the same brand ideal that your product has from another industry. Actually, they would provide much better value as well. So there are pros and cons to it, but when you study all that, you're going to bring in all the assumptions. So the point here is when you put retention rate, be very conservative. Do not say that I'm going to retain 50% of my customers. No. Even applications like Netflix or Disney have a retention rate of 10 to 20%. They have very high churns. So we will look at, so one point takeaway is please keep your retention rates very conservative. Second is discount rate. It's very important for you to understand the components of a discount rate. If it is going to be that you're going to have a financial team who's going to work along with you or guide you, or a consultant who's going to do the financials, they can just give you the discount rate. If not, you will end up usually computing in a startup. So discount rate is basically the returns that the investors are looking for, or the bank is looking for from you, plus your inflation that is going to reduce the value of the dollar. So discount rate can be directly articulated as $1 today is not $1 or is not equal to $1 tomorrow. Or when you look at the net present value concept, $1 tomorrow is always less than $1 today in your hand. So you will have to consider your discount rates year on year. We're going to see that as well in the formula, but get the concept of discount rate. And then we spoke enough on customer acquisition cost. So we're good there. We'll quickly walk you through the workings on the Excel itself that would give better clarity. So go with the flow at the moment. So this is the present value formula. So whenever I take any future returns that I'm going to get, I'm going to discount it to get the current value. meaning I'm going to get $200 by end of next year, let's say. That means that $200 have to be discounted to know what is the actual value in today's terms. Because I'm going to do my planning of my business and my operations today. So I would have to take the valuation backward to fit into my today's business model or business calculation. So that's why we keep applying discount rate. And here it is straightforward. You take the future value. I would not say revenue, it's more of future value. So you take the future value and you divide it by 1 plus discount rate to the T. T is nothing but your year to the power of T. So we'll see it here. We have applied some of those. So let's say I'm doing a startup, right? So in our scenario, I'm building an app and we want, once we have built an app, we want to market the app. But the first year when we are building an app, no one is going to buy or no one is going to onboard the app, right? The MVP is still not out. So I'm going to have a fixed cost. I would rather say not a fixed cost, but it's your sunk cost from a unit economic standpoint. You cannot do much on it. It's your sunk cost. Yes, it will eventually come to your cash flows. It will come to your financial statements and everything. But from a unit economic standpoint, where we are addressing customer lifetime value, that's a sunk cost for me. Now the product is launched. Year 2, we are launching the product. Still, I'm going to have some fixed costs. So fixed cost is not directly taken into account while doing customer lifetime value computation. We don't take fixed cost. Fixed cost will eventually come and break even. We are going to see how customer lifetime value will tie to break even as well. So I have a monthly recurring revenue. In this case, it's $20. That means a customer is going to pay $20 every month to use our application and services. And for simplicity of math, we are not going to charge anything to our customers for each and every service. We're just going to keep every month they'll pay $20 and they can take 5 to 6 limited number of services for free. There is a unit cost of operation for every customer. For operating that account, I would have to spend $3. So this I have taken it on a SaaS business model basis. That's because that's the reason you see unit cost of operations as 3, because I'm not going to have any physical person walking to the doorstep of the customer. So they're just going to subscribe $20. So probably I'll take the SaaS business model itself. It'll be much easier for explanation and also for understanding. So I'm going to have a SaaS wherein I have a product for managing, let's say, product management. Right? We're going to have an app like AHA or product map. And this product charges $20 to its subscribers per user. And to run the app, I'm going to spend $3 per subscription. Cloud storage, data API calls, expenses on operation. So let's say that's going to be $3 per account. And what is my unit contribution margin? It's $17. And what is the retention cost per customer? I'm putting in a conservative number of $2. I'm going to spend $2 on the customer for every subscription. Every month, I'm going to spend $2. These are all monthly numbers. So every month, I'm going to spend $2 on the customer. So on a year, probably I'll spend $24. I would be giving goodies or probably spending some time on customer support to talk to the customer, get feedback. So overall, I'm going to spend $2. So what's my annual recurring revenue? It's a straightforward computation. I'm just going to take the margin contribution per month, multiply it for the year. And I'm also minus the retention cost that I'm spending. This is the top half of the formula. What is my margin minus retention cost? I've got my annual recurring revenue. Now my retention rate comes into picture. So I'm saying that for the first year or operation, which is year 2, I'm just going to have only 20% of my customer retained by end of the year. So 80% of the customer is not going to continue with the subscription. They're just going to walk out. So I've put 20% as my retention rate. So I'm not going to take anywhere the number of customers we have. We will, and it's being done on a purpose. There is a way also I take the customer and everything in the top-down approach But here we are going to arrive at our break even as well. So hence we have not taken anywhere the number of customers that we have. And we are looking at retention rate. And then based on the retention rate, we get the churn rate. Churn rate is nothing but my 1 minus my retention rate is going to get my churn rate. So 80% of my customers will leave the platform. That's what it means. And then comes the discount rate. So here I've put as cost of capital, which is, let's say I'm going to an investor requesting him for her for money, and they're going to tell me that they're going to give it to me at an interest of 15%, and they're going to ask me for like probably 10%, and going to ask me for 3% equity. And plus I'm going to account for 7% of inflation year on year. So I've just put a random number of 20%. Some startups even go all the way till 50% as discount rate. But yeah. And then I move on then to the lifetime value of the existing customer. So what we have done here is we have taken the annual rate and we have applied this formula 1 minus retention rate plus the discount rate I. And I've got my lifetime customer value, which is $140 to start with. So recurring revenue is 140, but the lifetime of the customer, 180, but the lifetime of the customer is only 140. And that's because I also have acquisition cost, and I do not have a large customer base to start with. So in this case, my expenses are just going to be netted off against the annual recurring revenue. And from that, I've negated the customer acquisition cost, and I've got what is the customer lifetime value. So if you look at the formula here, we have just applied the same. So we have taken the annual revenue divided by 1 minus retention rate, plus we have taken the discount rate, and we have arrived at the lifetime value. And minus the acquisition cost, we have got the actual lifetime value. Now, what does this mean? Now, I know that 140 is my lifetime value of the customer, but how long it's going to take for me to get that information, get that money from the customer? So every month they're going to pay $20. So in a year, it is 140. So 140 is my revenue. So my churn rate is 80%. So I need to know what is the average customer lifetime as well. And for that, I just need to take 1 divided by my churn rate. So 1 divided by my churn rate tells me that the average lifetime of the customer that I'm acquiring is only 1.3 years. In this case, it's finally we have multiplied by 12, so it's 3 years. So 1.3 years. So that means I cannot have the customer beyond that time. And that also means from 20% of my customer being retained, I'm still able to keep them only for 1.3 years in using the app. Now, if I now know that how much it takes for me to acquire a customer, what is the revenue that I'm going to get from a customer, now we go to how many subscriptions then I have to make to meet my break even. Because in this entire formula, we have only taken the variable cost, meaning the cost of operations, what is the cost of acquiring customers, what is the cost of retaining customers. These are all variable costs. But I also have a fixed cost, right? Which is for it could be probably my property, and it could be for the bills that I would have to pay consistently year on year or month on month. So for the first year, my fixed cost is 20,000. So how many subscriptions should I have to make to ensure that I'm able to meet my break even? And here it says that I have to have 143 subscriptions to ensure that I break even in year 1. And that is exactly what we have done year on year, all the way to 5 years. So 5 years of operations is basically 6 years. But I'll share the sheet as well. But one important thing that you will have to take a note here is we have applied discount rate on our cost. Meaning, so this is basically conservative way of accounting. So we are applying the discount rate on our cost, assuming that it's going to increase year on year, right? So from $3, it becomes 3.6 because I've applied a discount rate of 20%. So I'm going to keep spending more and more and more on my operations because of the returns that I have to pay and the inflations that I have to incur. And similarly, we apply it on the negative side on our recurring revenue, right? Because it's going to have a negative impact. As I increase the cost of operations, I'm going to reduce the recurring revenue that I'm going to get from the customer. And that is what we have applied here. Actually, it's recurring revenue, I would say rather margin, because we have already taken the revenue here and negated everything. So I'll edit it before sending it across. And if you look at the retention rate, I'm forecasting, this is all assumptions. I'm forecasting that my retention rate will go up from 20% to all the way to 60% in 6 years. And I'm also, based on that, computing the churn rate and discount rate. I've kept it constant across the spectrum as 20% year on year. Now, if you look at the lifetime value of the existing customer, then apply the same formula, and I'm going to get so-and-so recurring value. Now, as part of that, again, I'm going to put acquisition cost of customer. And I've put here that every year my customer acquisition cost is going to reduce. From $40, it has gone all the way to $15 in year 5. And again, this is also an assumption. And then the customer lifetime value is what is computed on that. And if you look at it, the customer lifetime value keeps increasing, right? And here, if you look at why my customer lifetime value is positive, because my acquisition cost is considerably less. So let's say in our previous example, we saw 250 as our acquisition cost. Then my lifetime value goes to negative 70. Right? So higher your acquisition cost, negative or lower your customer lifetime value. And here I'm saying that my average customer lifetime is also increasing because we have an increase in the retention rate of our customers. So our lifetime value is also increasing. So I've just tried to squeeze everything. So please take your time to go through it. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach back to us. So in the interest of time, I think we are on top of the hour. We will park 10 minutes to take questions. So this is what we saw, right? So in this case, we are saying that in year 2, my customer acquisition cost is going to dip further below my revenue. So I'm going to turn profitable in some point in year 2, right? And how do I know which customers I have to invest in? One of the good analysis is recency, frequency, monetary value that you generate from your customers, and the basket size you generate from your customers, and what is the net promoter score of your customer. So it's a separate discussion in itself, but when you do an RFM BN analysis, it's an extension of RFM analysis, you will know the quality of the customers you have in your customer base, and you will be able to do better targeted marketing, right? So understanding, so you will have to understand the units of it, right, at unit level. And that's what we saw, like the break even, what we computed as well. So I'm not going to go into the details of the break even, but in short, you will have to know how many units or how many customers, meaning subscriptions, you would like to have to ensure you're covering for your fixed cost, not variable, fixed cost. And that is what will give you the break even. So my customer lifetime value will tell me at transaction or customer level whether I'm making profit positively. And break even point will tell me whether the profit that I'm making is in line with the number of customers I need to ensure that I'm covering for the other fixed cost I'm incurring to run my business. So these two metrics will tell you that whether you're breaking even at transaction level and also whether you're breaking even at each subscription level. Both are at unit level. Right? So in this case, we are saying that to break even, I need to hit 127 transactions or subscriptions in this screenshot that you're seeing on the right side. And so that's also there in that Excel that we will be sharing. So you can have a quick look at it as well. So I've just put here increment of tens and I've shown like where you actually break even. So it would help you understand that. Probably 3 key takeaways. Sorry for overshooting by a few minutes. The 3 key takeaways in this squeezed in session. One, customer lifetime value. Second is your customer acquisition cost. So these two is like the lifeline of your customer lens of your business, right? Whether am I getting enough customers to run my business and am I spending just enough to get new customers? Third is your break-even point, meaning have I made enough number of subscriptions to meet the other fixed costs in running the company, right? So whether am I able to get enough subscriptions? So I could have my customer lifetime value positive. I could have my customer acquisition cost positive, but my fixed cost is so high that the number of subscriptions I have does not tally. So my break-even point says that I need to have 100 customers in the first year, whereas though my customer acquisition cost and everything is positive, I've just made 25 customers in the first year. That means I've not hit the break even in first year because my fixed cost is very high and I'm not able to generate enough subscriptions to meet that. And the final one is your assumptions, and ensure that the assumptions that we take at desirability, usability, viability, feasibility, and usability are all pressure tested continuously, and you investigate them and you plan them or you defer them or you monitor them continuously. You will have to keep your assumptions monitored and updated. And those changes in the assumptions will be backward incorporated into your retention rate, backward incorporated into your cost of capital, your discount rate, which all then ties back to your unit economics to figure out whether you're heading in the right path as a startup. So all of this is tied together. So we will just share you some quick links. There are some really interesting links on by MIT Bootcamp, which talks about in detail unit economics. Please spend time to go through that. It's really fascinating how they have explained it in detail. Why unit economics still matters, will tell you a bit of workings and stuff. How do you build assumptions? We said there is so much on assumptions, but we were not able to deep dive. So we have given a quick link on how you can do assumptions and what does it really mean. And in case you're doing a startup, we have also provided some top incubators who you can pitch your startup idea to. They have an incubator program for 10 to 12 weeks where you can go in and participate. Right? I think I'll leave this aside. Probably I'll get another opportunity to present you the perceived value of a product and what is the willingness to pay versus willingness to supply. To Atul's question, this is one of the important areas when we negotiate with acquisition or getting dealers onboarded or sellers onboarded. So we need to make sure that the value that we generate is profitable enough for us. And one of the key things is willingness to supply for a supplier or a dealer. How much can I benefit from that transaction before the supplier will walk out on me? Like these are some of the things that Walmart applies today and Apple applies today. If you look at their days of inventory or their days of stock, they are negative. Basically, that means that days of payable is negative. That means that I'm going to have a longer payment period, meaning my days of payment is going to be like 60 days, and my days of inventory that I have is going to be just 14 days. That means I'm rotating my money that many times before I actually make payment to my supplier. So there's a lot of other things that comes into play as part of this, but definitely an interesting topic to discuss in detail further or explore as well. So thank you. Thanks everyone for your time. I've taken 6-7 minutes overtime, but
Yes,
I
Suresh.
hope I was able to make your time worthy of it, and happy to take questions offline.
Hi, folks. I have pasted the feedback link in the chat. Maybe please provide your feedback because that would benefit us in organizing further sessions. Also, thanks, Suresh. Thanks for taking your time. I think you have explained us in depth about how to know our customer before knowing our product. Also about customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value, and also the Excel you showed. It's really will be helpful. I'll attach it in the description of the YouTube channel. You can check it there. Thanks, everyone.